Welcome to Healing Your Families. We're talking about physical well-being, how important it is for families. And I'm excited to welcome my guest today. She is also a Win-Win Women show host. In fact, her show is right after mine. But please help me welcome Nancy White, the healthy sales chick. Nancy, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Emma Lou. I'm so grateful to be here with you today.
And I'll tell you, Nancy, the first time I met you, I was fascinated by that handle, the healthy sales chick, for a couple of reasons. One, because I know that our cells are important. Isn't that where healing takes place? Mm-hmm. And then also, that was so catchy, the healthy sales chick.
But we have to make it fun, Emma Lou, because, sometimes people don't like having to think about taking care of yourselves, and it's not one of those things. But you know what? When we can make anything in life fun, then it goes a lot easier.
It's true. Absolutely true. So tell us about your journey. How did you become the healthy sales chick?
Oh, my goodness, Emily. So we're not going to tell the whole story because I'm almost 71. That take a long time. So, but anyway, I really, the whole began with the premature deaths of my father and my oldest brother, John. When I was 9, my father died of Hodgkin's disease. And then my oldest brother, John, was studying to be a doctor when he was in the Navy and discovered his own leukemia and lived 2 years longer. So in my mind, I kept thinking, I would like to get past their ages, but also I wanted to start doing that research on prevention. And so I've been a 30+ year researcher in natural prevention and, just learning about ways to nurture our mind, our body, and our spirit, because all three have to be nurtured every day. But I think their premature deaths were the birth, unfortunately, of my desire and to be a lifelong learner. I mean, things are always changing and evolving. You and I both know. I mean, just even 50 years ago, things were not like they are today. So, but that was the beginning of really my love to learn about those ways to be preventative naturally. And my beautiful mother was 96, Emma Lou, when she moved home to be with the Lord. And she was the health nut ahead of her time. And so she was a great influence in helping me to think naturally, and just, have that preventative mindset.
Let's take a minute to appreciate mothers. My mother also was very health minded. I don't know if you remember Jack LaLanne. I remember growing up, mom exercising. Jack LaLanne was on our black and white TV back in the 50s, and she would exercise, and she taught us how important it is to take care of our bodies, to eat healthy foods. So what a blessing to have a health-minded mother.
Absolutely.
Now, it isn't just living longer, it's also the quality of life, right?
Absolutely, because we want to be able to thrive and not just survive, Emma Lou. And you and I both have beautiful grandchildren, and we want to be able to get on the ground and play with them on the floor and, play with them, snuggle them, do a little wrestling, not too much, but, but we want to be able to, keep mobile. And that's one of the things, and keeping that mind sharp is so important also. But you're absolutely correct. We don't want it just to be sitting around in a chair until we're not here anymore.
Yes, I know. I've heard the expression that some people die years before they're buried.
Yeah.
So you're inspired by your family. You started this study, and I know you've been studying it for years. I have a lot of respect and admiration for all you've learned. Can you share some of the tips and things that you found to improve the quality of life as well as prolong it?
Absolutely. And there's, I know that you're focusing on some things for health in your show currently. And just, I'm not going to share, all this research and everything But I think, for people, we take for granted sometimes just the simple things of life, and, how important sleep is. Sleep is our recovery time, and we need, 7 to 8 hours of peaceful rest at night. And as our body continually ages, and I think it's interesting because it's really around 30 or so, our body stops making collagen like it should. And also the melatonin levels and all these other things, just start going on dwindling slowly. But it's about, I think, a 10% decrease every year as we continually age. So finding healthy, natural ways, to sleep peacefully and sound is really important, and make that a priority. For people like me too, I'm a night owl and I love staying up at night and doing things and getting things done. But if I stay up, too late several nights in a row, then that next day I'm sort of going, I think I'm a little draggy and I think I have darker circles under my eyes. We just have to know, I think for women especially, I don't believe in balance because we're not moving. We just always are. We're planning, prioritizing, and pacing. And then, our days, and just like you were sharing, you had a little unexpected evening or nighttime awake. Those things happen, but we go through life and we just adjust as we continue. But I really think sleeping is really important. And if people need to have some other suggestions, we can always go over that later. But another thing we hear is, eating a healthy, having a healthy diet. And unfortunately, especially we're in the country that we're in, our food supply has really gotten very dicey. And, sometimes I call it fake food, but there's some things that, through additives and impurities and toxins, pesticides, herbicides, GMOs, all these things that we have been sort of guinea pigs being experimented by, the food industry. And if we pull back, everything that's been going on, it usually leads to money. And so we have to know how to make those good, better, best choices on what crosses our lips and becomes part of us within 36 to 48 hours. Especially just even simpler things on ways to keep your pH balanced, especially cancer thrivers I work with. But just knowing, those alkaline versus acidic foods, anti-inflammatory foods, the different things. And then, we have to supplement. Unfortunately, again, you have to be able to supplement because the ionic minerals that were natural in all the foods that were raised, decades ago, all those things aren't there anymore. So for that happy, healthy cell, we talk about the healthy cells chick, there's 90 basic building blocks for a happy, healthy cell, and 70 of them are ionic minerals. So again, that's another area just, to be mindful about, and always be looking and researching, reading labels. There is so many apps. There's so many different things out. And I found a new app the other day, somebody shared with me. You can scan the barcode on different foods in the grocery store or whatever, and it evaluates it for you. And so we'll have to, possibly share that. But anyways, Emily, that's another very important thing for our quality of health as we continue to age. And again, hydration is another area. I mean, our bodies are made of mostly water. And so we talk about, the kinds of water that people are drinking. And most women, unfortunately, don't drink the amount of water they should. Most women don't have the right amount of protein or know very much about protein pacing. So, but hydration is something that's another really good area, because in the wintertime, sometimes it's harder for people to drink, the amount of water they need to, but especially as it gets hotter. I had a friend that he worked in a construction business, and he was in his late 50s, and he passed away from dehydration.
Wow.
Mhm.
I didn't even realize. I knew that that dehydration caused health problems.
Mhm.
But of course that makes sense. We need water. So if we're not getting it,
Yeah.
wow.
But and a lot of times people don't realize that by the time they're thirsty, their body's already dehydrated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I had heard that. Now, I want to just go over a couple things you said. You've said some really profound things there. Just to recap, you talked about sleep. Have you found that I've heard the term sleep hygiene, just establishing this routine at this time, we turn off the computer, all electronics,
Mhm.
and we start this routine. So we train our brain. We are now preparing for sleep.
Mhm.
What have you found that works with that?
Exactly what you said. Get the technology out of your face at least an hour before you go to bed. If you sleep better in a cool room, even if it's like a fan going. And then some people they have the noise machines because that seems to help them, be able to block out things. But again, just having that time, I really think one of the most important things for myself and other people that I've talked with, Emmylou, is ending that day with gratitude, making sure that you just stop and reflect back over the day and just be grateful. My first book that came out with is a GRT journal. It stands for Gratitude, Reflections, and Tips. And, just making sure if you just jot down a few things on a piece of paper and a notebook that day, those things that were your highlight, the things that you did for fun, just go through some things and end that day with gratitude. You know, praying for you. I believe, God gives sweet sleep to those that he loves, but there's certain things that you can go over in your routine, like you're talking about, that help you to be able to get into that prepared for good rest.
And I've also found it's helpful to have a physically active day. If I've had a day when I did some exercise, I kept busy, I didn't sit for any longer than maybe an hour at a time, then I'd get up and move around. That
Mhm.
helped too. I sleep better when I've been more active during the day.
Absolutely. And you just touched on one of the other 10 tips is
Oh,
exercise. Because, we talk about you either move it or lose it, but also the things that are exercising, just like you do a great job with your friend, go walking, is awesome for anxiety and depression. But it's also great for your brain, again, to be able to get up and move and do things. People that love to dance, Emmylou, are 60 to 80% less likely to have dementia. Exercising and dancing can just be so much fun and has those great long-term benefits. But you're right, when we do exercise, and if we even exercise 30 minutes 5 times a week, you can release 5 pounds without doing anything else every year. And most people as they age, they're gaining 5 to 10 pounds every year. So that's another great way, to just know that your exercising is incredible for all those hormones, all those things in our body, because our bodies were made to move.
they are. Now, and I loved how you pointed out, we tend to think of our mind and our body, but they're all connected. We can worry ourselves sick if we're not controlling our thoughts. So it's understanding how they all work together.
Yep. And you just touched on another tip
Oh,
when you're talking about your mind, because it is every single day. If we just have that quiet time to meditate, to be still, to have the renewing of our mind is so important, because every single day we get to have a do-over, we get to have a start. And we know those things that just keep gnawing at us, sometimes. And we have to learn some tips and some tricks on how to bless and release, to release and let go. And as you release things, you need to refill. So, we don't want to just have a void. So I think it's really very important for us to schedule that time in, to have that quiet time, to meditate, to get still. And then even throughout the day, get up. If you're working in your home or wherever and you're in front of your computer for hours and hours, get up, go outside, go to the mailbox, go take a walk, go breathe. Do those 5 senses are huge. That's really important when that anxiety starts welling up in our tummies. And all of a sudden we're going, oh, this feels like it's really growing. And just, you got to stop. Stop for a minute and just breathe. Just breathe in. and go over those five senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? What do you taste? What do you feel? And as you go through those five things, like five fingers, five things, it's incredible how all of a sudden that anxiety that was starting to well up has just started to subside. So you're very correct when you talk about, meditating and having that mindfulness, starting the day, ending the day, and then all in between. Because, we're not immune from all the things that we're being combated with all day long.
Absolutely. And I love that, the sympathetic, the fight or flight, and the parasympathetic, the rest and digest. We really should be spending the majority of our time in the parasympathetic, is my understanding. Sympathetic, that fight or flight, that will help. That could save your life if there's an actual danger. But too many of us live in that state. So I loved what you said about the mindfulness just throughout the day.
Yeah, it is. And, I can remember, oh my gosh, over 16, 17 years ago, when we're talking about things for energy levels, because, when you're raising children and you're doing all these things, and all of a sudden you're going, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you're going, I feel like my steam is going out. And I could remember I was addicted to caffeine, like in the late afternoons, I was fixing like iced coffee or something like that, whatever. But there are some natural things too. And we had to make sure, even having green tea or things with adaptogens and electrolytes and those types of things, just make sure you're reading your labels to know what's in it. But, make sure you're not doing things, too much after like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or you might be a night owl and you didn't want to be a night owl. And so, but, just find those good things that are going to keep you burning. We've got to feed the fuel. We got to fuel, we don't want to just be always on empty. I've heard women and some people say, I was just so busy, I forgot to eat all day. And I'm sitting there going, I think you need to, stop and be mindful and, just like you're talking about, plan and do those things. Because if we as women burn out, why do we want to burn out and age faster? We're trying to all not age faster. And then,
Yes.
everybody's selling stuff for, wrinkles and everything else. I'm sitting there going, there's some things that you can just do that can help you to age with grace and strength and vitality. But, I think, again, and you've seen it, you work with families all the time. As the woman, the mama does, and she's training everybody else in the household, especially the children.
Oh, she sets the pace.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And she is usually the one that chooses the food that they eat and when they eat,
Yeah.
and teaching them that structure and that example.
I know.
It's huge.
Haven't you laughed too, Emma Lou, when you'll hear moms going, my children won't eat anything except for chicken nuggets or just macaroni and cheese. And I'm sitting there going, who's buying it? So, if you let your children get involved in, making some good selections and helping to prepare and doing those things, making it a fun family situation. And I'm sitting there thinking, they'll only eat cookies or potato chips. I'm saying, so how'd they get in the house?
I've heard take them to a farmer's market, somewhere where they let them sample. They'll give samples and give every child the challenge to try one new vegetable, and then plan, okay, which vegetables are we going to eat this week?
Yeah.
And rather than saying, do you want to eat your vegetables, it should be, do you want to eat broccoli or peas? Or,
That's given that logical brain, when you said that for children, you don't say, do you want this? Or, why don't, say, okay, we're going to have either, just like you said, you get to either have broccoli or we could have spinach. Which one do you think would be best for today?
and you're giving them choice. You're giving them choice.
You're giving them a choice. You're putting boundaries around it and you're giving them a choice. So I think it's interesting. And I think, just like when children are growing up, they would take naps and do things all the time. Well, the same thing, we need to take breaks, like we talked about a little while ago, getting up sometime during the day and walking out and getting some fresh air. And there's a lot of fun exercises on YouTube. I mean, I got to work out with Arnold Schwarzenegger 50 years ago, and I was a gym rat for years, but I love doing things like holy yoga or different exercises that you can find out that are fun, using some resistance weights. And I myself have reversed osteoporosis naturally over the last 20 something years. So you want to be able to making that exercise fun, especially with your children or your family, if you still are raising children. And just, like we just said, put on music and dance, be silly, do all those fun things. Something my children and I used to do after birthday parties, because we've blown up so many balloons for birthdays. We would take a little string, like a piece of thread, sewing thread, tie it around, and we would have a balloon rally. We would chase each other around and try to stomp on the balloon to pop it. So don't have to cost a lot of money about doing some activities. You can be very creative, but again, it's very healthy for us, especially, to take breaks throughout the day.
You said something I want to go back to. You talked about reversing osteoporosis.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now it's my understanding that our bodies are designed to heal themselves. If we give them the right nutrients, the right care, our bodies can heal themselves. Now, talk about that.
Okay. So for myself, I chose to do it naturally, Emmylou. And I knew that, using omegas, really good omegas was important. Having a good kind of bone building supplement, and you can do some research. Also, another supplement that is really important, they didn't have it in the United States for a long time, but it's strontium. And so it's another mineral, but it's great for building bone, but keeping the pH alkaline, because your body, if your pH is staying 7 to 7.5, then degenerative diseases cannot flourish, and also cancers cannot. But the sleep is huge, and also the weight-bearing exercises. So it takes a long time for bone. It's always breaking down and rebuilding. But, my bone density tests have improved every year. And so, I want to continue on. It's just not a once and done thing, especially since you've had some challenges. Sometimes people think, oh, I've gone through my treatment, I've gone through my medication or whatever. But our bodies are continually regenerating, and we get new ones every 6 to 8 years. So you might as well make a new good one. But, I think being mindful, especially about, you think about being acidic, because like even if you put a bone in something that's acidic, it's going to start dissolving. But I think that's one of the things, is being mindful about making, again, those good, better, best choices.
And I'm not sure everyone understands what makes some foods more acidic, and the whole pH level. And I also have the thought, you keep talking about you can do your research. You have researched this for years. So don't you provide people with the benefit of your years of research?
I do. And I love sending them a list of alkaline versus acidic foods and just different things. So yes, just like you, Emmylou, I have file drawers or databases full of information from researching.
So and you mentioned osteoporosis, and I know there are other ailments that we're prone to as we age.
It is. And especially during this time, this is a great time to even talk about our skin, our biggest organ that we have. I mean, I've had skin cancer years ago because I was born before sunscreen was invented. But, but this time of year, it's really important to wear a healthy sunscreen, and finding one that's got clear zinc oxide, so you don't have that big old whiteness. But clear zinc oxide protects 3 layers deep with your skin. And so it's just something that, again, wearing those hats, wearing those things to protect you out in the sun is really important. It's great to get some sun because it helps our body to create vitamin D and vitamin K. People would say, you need to go get in the sun so you can get vitamin K and vitamin D. Well, it doesn't just give us vitamin K and vitamin D, it helps our bodies to produce the vitamin K and the vitamin D through the sunshine. But yes, skin is one of those things that is so absorbable, even though it completely regenerates every 21 days. I'm surprised we don't look like cheesecloth, but we don't. But but making sure that you are doing those great things to protect your skin, and just like we talked earlier, hydration is huge, water for your skin. But especially this time of year, being mindful about, protecting yourself. It's good to have that nice glow. You just don't want to damage and be prone to skin cancer.
I'm thinking of my ancestors who lived on farms, they were outside all the time, but you mentioned they wore hats, they wore long sleeves, they were protecting themselves. And quite often in our modern life, we're mostly indoors. Summer comes, we go spend the day at the beach. Suddenly we're 8 hours in the sun. Now, you said something I want you to elaborate on. You talked about the sunscreen, that the clear needs to be clear. Can you?
Oh, it's clear zinc oxide. You can get sunscreens that have clear zinc oxide in it. And so that's an ingredient. And just looking at sunscreen and looking at the labels, I'm again reading them, especially for children. You don't want to put chemicals on them that could later on cause some cancers, especially anything that's got parabens in it or anything like that. So just reading your labels and knowing, and just like I said, we Google so much with these little computers at our brains, second things, but there is, different ways that you can evaluate the quality of a sunscreen also.
Well, that is good to know, that sunscreens are not all created equal.
No,
Read the labels. That makes perfect sense. Now, did we cover all of your 10 tips?
Let me just look back over really quick and just talk about we're hydrated, take breaks. We talked about reducing stress, which is so important because it can lead to so many other things. Spend time in natural sunlight. We talked about that, and exercising, prioritizing tasks. We know how that is because, sometimes when I was raising my family, all of a sudden something was really important to me and I had to stop and think about it. Really? Does that have to be done today? Is this something that I could spend time with my child and make them feel loved and appreciated and elevated? Or is this just my agenda? So I think, prioritizing things are really important. Just, if we get to wake up tomorrow, yay, we get another chance. But, taking breaks and then, doing some things, again, naturally for your energy levels. Instead of drinking, sodas. People don't realize that when you drink one soda, it shuts your immune system down for 8 hours and leaves you a little bit more vulnerable. So making those good, better, best choices. It's not that you don't ever get to drink, sodas or have different things. But I think we've covered the basic things. And I know our time is rolling down.
Years ago, I remember when I was studying nutrition, I heard the saying that the healthiest diet was to eat a variety of foods as close to their natural state as possible. And over the years, I've heard there have been so many fad diets. And for a while, I remember hearing margarine's better than butter. And then I hearing, nope, butter's better. And then don't stay away from bacon, and bacon's okay.
Don't eat popcorn.
Yeah, don't eat popcorn. And so, we talk about exactly what is a healthy diet, but you made some very helpful comments on how it really depends on we need to know for ourselves and do our research. Now, I know that you are a valuable resources. I want to make sure everyone knows, how can they contact you? It sounds like you've got a lot to offer. How do you work with people? Tell us about that.
One person at a time, Emily. So I love working with one person. And if they just go to my website, thehealthysaleschick.com, and it's CELLS, there's a couple of fun free things there. There's a quiz for evaluating your stress levels and some suggestions. Another quiz for you to do your self-evaluation on your health today and some healthy suggestions. But there's a link there. They can schedule a time just to talk and to I will celebrate the good things that people are doing first and foremost, and then we can talk about some areas that they might like to tweak or enhance. So that's the easiest way. Just go into my website, thehealthysaleschick.com.
And your QR code is there on your screen, right?
It is.
Awesome. I love it. Okay. And if they just, when this show ends, they just need to go back into winwinwomen.tv, and you're under the health category.
I am. And my show is The Healthy Sales Chick.
Yep. Right after this one. Nancy, thank you so much for joining us. You're going to help us be healthier. And that's, if you want to be an effective parent, you need to be the role model of healthy eating and healthy habits. And as mothers, we're making these decisions for our families. So I loved what you shared. Thank you so much. For my audience, thank you for joining us. And please join us again next week at the same time. Until then, let's make the world a better place by strengthening families. This is Emily Penrod at healingyourfamilies.com.